Hello again and welcome to another round of Tuesday Night Legacy presented by Spellhold Games. My name's Eugene and this is round 4 from February 1st. This is 2 control decks facing off against each other. We have 4-color Yorion Zenith, piloted by Damien. He's playing Yorion the Sky Nomad as his companion. His deck has to be 80 cards in order to use Yorion as the companion, and so that gives him access to all sorts of fun extra cards. And we have Max on the right playing Uro Doomsday. So both of these decks use Uro, and we'll get more into him later, but Max is trying to win through a combo finish, whereas Damien is trying to win through more of a control mid-range style finish. So with all that, let's get started. Max has the starting play here. He starts with an Underground Sea, Wasteland coming down from Damien, and we actually see a Stifle turn 1. Counter a target activated ability of that Wasteland, so it came down and it wasn't able to do anything. So Max up on the tempo there with that play. We see a Baleful Strix come down. Fun little 1-1 with that Death Touch and Flying, and when it enters the battlefield, it draws a card. It's very good at holding back all sorts of different beaters, since it does have that Death Touch and Flying, so it can get around evasion creatures. When it attacks, I mean, it's going to take 20 turns to kill someone, but, each turn that it's attacking is a little bit closer. It's a clock, and if there's nothing else going on, why not? All right, we see another Baleful Strix coming down, taking that 20-turn clock, turning it into a 10-turn clock. Much better. So we see 2 beats come in. Icefang Codal doing its best impression of a Baleful Strix. There aren't enough snow-covered permanents in play yet, so it was just a 1-1, was able to still trade with one of those Baleful Strix. We see Max cast the first Uro of the game. Don't worry, we'll see quite a few of these casts throughout this game. This is a 6/6 for 3 mana. When it enters the battlefield, you gain 3 life, draw a card, and play an extra land if you got it. And it does get sacrificed, but you can pay 4 mana and exile 5 cards from your yard and get it back into play. And so that enter the battlefield effect can actually trigger every time it attacks as well. So quite the powerhouse of a card. I see a lot of decks being built around Uro. You already want to play blue for all of the Force of Wills and Dazes and such, and green is actually a very strong color in Legacy right now as well. So if you're playing them both, might as well play Uro. We see Max casting Uro from his grave, exiling 5 cards. He gets that extra land trigger from Uro entering the battlefield. So 2 mana. We see that Damien is a little short on mana right now, but he is coming back at 4 mana. Sacrifice the Windswept Heath. Gets a Tundra. 3-4 mana. Oh, dropped some cards, not a problem. The 80-card deck, kind of hard to shuffle at first, but as the game goes on, gets smaller and smaller. Oh, here's an Uro for Damien's side. So this is 3 mana. So that Uro will go to the grave, but he also gets to gain 3 life, draw a card, play an extra land. But we don't see another land come down, so there was not a land on the top of the deck. Untap 7th land for Max, 2 mana, a Baleful Strix. Drawing all kinds of cards. I think I saw a Force of Will and an Abrupt Decay in Max's hand. Looks like we're getting a Swords to Plowshares here. I'm not entirely certain what it's targeting. I think it's Uro. That would definitely be the correct choice here, as it is generating the max amount of value. Max says, no thanks, I'll hard cast this Force of Will. Damien has his own Force of Will, exiling Brainstorm, so that Swords to Plowshares will resolve. Max will gain 6 life, and goes in for an attack with 1 Baleful Strix. Pass back to Damien. So that's 1 Uro down. I'm pretty sure that there's at least 3 in the deck on Max's side. I'm not entirely certain about Damien's list, but we will see more Uros. Okay, pulling off exiled cards, and Uro getting cast from Damien's grave, drawing that extra card, gaining some life. Untap, back to Max's side. 7 mana, what is he going to do? It looks like he has an Ideas Unbound in hand. So he's thinking about casting it. Ideas Unbound is going to draw him 3 cards right now. And then it has an static delayed trigger effect that says at the end of his turn, he has to discard 3 cards. So I think he's looking for his Doomsday right now. Drawing 3 more cards with the Brainstorm. He's seen 6 cards. 2 cards go back on the top. He's going to play Misty Rainforest. Grab the Underground Sea that was on top of his deck. So we've got all 4 Underground Seas, 3 Tropical Islands, and 1 Bayou in play. Another cast. He's got 3 Ponders that he can resolve right now. So he doesn't like any of the cards on top of his deck. He's going to go for a shuffle. And he's going to go for that draw off the Ponder. Fresh card off the top. I think that was a Force of Will. Force of Will. And still has that Abrupt Decay. Doesn't like that one either. So that's so far he's cast Ideas Unbound, Brainstorm, 2 Ponders. He's going for his 3rd Ponder. So he's seen 9, 12, 15 cards this turn. Although each one has been just a little bit different since he has to shuffle each time with the Brainstorm. He's not actually going deeper into the deck. It's kind of a full statistical reset of his deck. Paying 2 mana. Gonna Abrupt Decay the Uro. And in for 1 with the Baleful Strix. Wow, that was a lot of cards. And then Max did have to discard down to 3 cards with that delayed trigger from the Ideas Unbound. Ooh. Plague Engineer coming down. I think Max had 1 card in hand. He's got a Brainstorm and a Force of Will. Ooh, there's an Uro. Uro, Consider, and a land. He's got to think about which ones he wants to see. That Plague Engineer did come down and choose Creature Type Bird, which killed both of those Baleful Strix. Pretty good. This is game 1, so Damien playing game 1 or match 1 Plague Engineer. Pretty interesting stuff. 4 mana, the Uro, so he's going to get 2 Uro triggers from this turn, drawing him 2 cards and getting 2 extra land drops if he has them. But with only the 1 Force of Will in hand, probably not. He's going to draw his card for casting Uro. He's going to pass. Damien's still on 6 lands. Got his 7th land here. Max has just an absurd amount of lands. I think he's got 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 9, actually. Flooded Strand's going to get Savannah on Damien's side. Going to cast Green Sun Zenith for 6. Although it will be countered by the Force of Will. Green Sun Zenith would have gotten him any creature out of his deck with converted mana cost 6 or less. I saw this deck being played in the last round. He was probably trying to get his Primeval Titan. Alright, so Damien blowing away the rest of his hand, attempting to Endurance the Graveyard, Max's Graveyard, and block with a Plague Engineer, getting rid of Uro completely. Brainstorm in response. Oh! Oh no! Max had the Stifle, so that's going to stop the triggered ability of getting rid of the Graveyard. And because it was evoked, he loses the Endurance as well. So Damien's going to lose everything. He's got nothing in hand, but he does have an Uro in the grave and quite a few cards in the grave at this point. But it is... Oh, it is still Max's turn. The Plague Engineer did do combat damage to the Uro, so Max got to cast it again, so he gets to see an extra card. Sending Uro to the grave isn't always the best idea, even though it is going to stop some damage from coming through to you. Getting that attack trigger and cast trigger every single turn is some pretty massive advantage. That's at least 3 cards a turn, 2 extra than just your normal card draw. Alright, Uro getting cast on Damien's side. 5 cards to the yard, to the exile pile. Going to draw an extra card. I think he drew a land for turn. And he didn't want to put down another land. He's thinking about blocking. He's going to play Icefang Codal. This creature does have Death Touch. So if it resolves, he gets to draw a card. And it will trade with Uro. Totally fine with that, Max says. I'm not trying to kill you here. I'm trying to draw cards. 4 mana. Another Uro cast. Max just having all of the cards in his graveyard with all of those cantrips that he was resolving earlier in the game. All of those fetch lands. I think he's got even one more cast of Uro if he really wants to here. Wow, Max looking at just so much permission in his hand. 2 Force of Will, a Stifle, and a Dark Ritual. Not that Dark Ritual is permission, but all those other cards are. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He could even hard cast that Force of Will if he really wanted to. Oh, so we did see Endurance already. Sorry about that. We are hard casting Primeval Titan here. Cast the Dark Ritual, get 3 black mana, tap 2 blue. Oh, so the Primeval Titan did not come into play. It did get hard cast Force of Willed. And Damien was not able to deal with that. The Prime Time coming down probably would have changed the flow of this game. We saw that there was a Field of the Dead in the deck, which would start generating a bunch of zombies. But all of this permission, it's just so hard to get through. We see that Damien is done blocking this Uro. So he's only getting 1 attack there. Ooh, it looked like looks like Max has the Thassa's Oracle in hand, but he does not have the Doomsday yet. 1 black mana, Dark Ritual. He does have the Doomsday. So Doomsday is going to exile. He's going to take 5 cards from his graveyard and his library. So he's going to take 2 out of his graveyard, which was the Ideas Unbound and Caverner Souls. He has to show those because it was in a public zone. But the last 3 cards he can choose from his library, and he does not have to reveal them. He's going to stack his deck, quote-unquote deck. These last 5 cards are going to become the rest of his deck. And Thassa's Oracle is actually the win condition here. It's going to check how many cards are left in his library, and if they're equal or less than his devotion to blue, then he simply wins the game. The trigger just says, you win the game. So the exile happens. Matt presents the rest of his deck as a pile to Damien. Damien doesn't need to check it out. Uro attacks, draws that 5th card. So down to 4 cards in library. Icefang Kotal coming down, decides to block. Ideas Unbound getting cast. This is going to draw him 3 cards if it resolves. Force of Negation coming down. Force of Will, forcing the Force of Negation. Draw 3 cards. Looks like Thoughtseize, Baleful Strix. Okay, Max letting that turn go by. Discarding 3 cards, letting Uro attack. I'm not entirely certain what their life totals are, but with the Uro attacks every single turn, back and forth, it's almost like they're only losing 3 life a turn. Casting Night of Autumn, put 2 counters on it. Max pretty confident here. He's going to Thoughtseize. And then he's going to play Thassa's Oracle. And since there are 0 cards in the deck, even if the Thassa's Oracle is removed from play, the Devotion trigger of 0 matches 0 cards in the deck, and he still wins the game. So we are on to match 2. Thoughtseize is going to take a non-land card out of the player's hand. In this case, he chose Ramnop Excavator. This card extremely good with cards like Wasteland and Fetch Lands. It basically makes it so that you can Wasteland every single turn, or that you can constantly make sure that you're hitting your land drops with your fetches. We have Carpet of Flowers come down here, but it is going to get countered. This card would have allowed Max to have X added mana to his main phase, either main phase 1 or 2, depending on the amount of islands that his opponent has. It's always good to have extra mana, especially getting to choose whether it's first or second main phase. Typically, the player that has more mana, especially in these permission battles, is the one that ends up winning. We see a Life from the Loam cast here on Damien's side, trying to pull back Wasteland, double Wasteland, and Prismatic, but that catches a Force of Will. Although with Life from the Loam in the grave, Damien can still dredge it next turn and try it again if he doesn't have a better play. Islands coming down. Wow, they are just keeping their mana pretty low. What happens with all these Wastelands? Damien looks like he took the draw instead of the dredge. 3 mana pass. Oh, Max passed it with just one island in play. Damien's turn, he decides to dredge and get that wasteland back. And Max is going to pick it up and say, nope, we're going on to game 3. I think I might have missed this. Sorry about that in the edit. Let me just skip a little bit forward here, and we'll get right into match 3. All right, Max with the play, starting with an Underground Sea. Forest for Damien, passing it back. Doing a little bit of pondering on Max's side. Like what he sees on top. I think he drew that Misty Rainforest. Green Sun Zenith for 1. On Damien's side, pulling out a Birds of Paradise. Birds of Paradise, pretty fun mana bird. It's a 1-cast 0/1 with flying and can tap for any color mana. Very good when you're a 4-color mana deck. Getting a Bayou on Max's side. Untap draw. Brainstorm. Blue decks always like to look at as many cards as possible, have their options open to them. But that is also one of the difficult parts of being a blue player. You need to get to know what you're doing at all times, since you have so many options available to you. Knowing how to resolve your brainstorm can make or break a game. Carpet of Flowers coming down on Max's side, catching a Force of Will here. Looks like there was a crack of a Misty Rainforest in response. Max might be looking to fight over this, although there is no blue mana in play yet. Mystical Dispute. This is going to counter a target blue spell, and it costs 2 less if it was targeting a blue spell. So it's counter target spell, and it costs 2 less if it's countering another blue spell. So that force did not resolve, although Prismatic Ending did take care of Carpet of Flowers. A lot of fighting over these specific cards that give incremental value. Because you got to deal with it now, or it's going to get out of control later. It was a Green Sun Zenith for 1, pulling out a Dryad Arbor. A nice mana ramp trick there, since Dryad Arbor does cost converted mana, cost 0. Okay, so we have the Doomsday resolving. Max is going to pull out his 5 cards. Typically, when you are the Doomsday player, you're kind of evaluating if you go for a same turn kill or a same turn win the game or not. Just because you're playing against blue, Damien does have 3 cards in hand. He doesn't have any islands, so he can't daze here. And that Dryad Arbor did just come into play, so he's technically tapped out. But that does not mean he doesn't have a Force of Negation or a Force of Will waiting to counter one of these spells that allow Max to draw several cards to win the game here. So he has to play around that. With only 1 mana open, I'm not entirely certain if Max has made his land drop here. We see Force of Will, Ideas Unbound, Thassa's Oracle, and it looks like that's Cavernous Souls, so that's 4 cards. He's looking for his 5th. Thinking it's going to be Lotus Petal. Lotus Petal allowing him to have that extra mana available, just in case. Decided Force of Will is not the right one. Brings out Stifle instead. Checking against his hand. I only saw Ponder there. I'm not sure if he has a Force of Will. He's thinking not Stifle, but instead a secret card that none of us get to know. Okay, then. Oh, it's Thoughtseize. So just making sure that he's completely clear. And he's going to play that Ponder and draw that Thoughtseize and let the turn go. 2 mana is going to get Aethersworn Canonist. Each player who has cast a non-artifact spell this turn can't cast additional non-artifact spells this turn. So this is going to slow down Max considerably. He's going to spend this turn to Thoughtseize. Going to show, oh wow, a Flusterstorm, a Force of Negation, and a Force of Will. Talk about having permission. So all 3 of these spells counter in some way or form. Max is going to say Force of Will. Don't want it. Force of Negation can only hit non-creature spells. There's a better way to say that. Can't remember. But Flusterstorm can specifically only hit instants and sorceries. So 2 mana, Thassa's Oracle has 2 Devotion, 2 cards left in the library, and that's going to win him the game because Force of Negation cannot target it. So Max takes it home and takes home the 4-0 for that round of our Tuesday Night Legacy. We'll see you guys next week, okay?